welcome to another special episode of the How Long to Beat podcast. I'm your host, Paula, joined as always by Josh/Avatash.
What's up, everybody?
And today we're dusting off an old agenda that we had saved for the very beginnings of this season that we didn't forget about. The topic today is gaming for non-gamers.
Yes.
Inspired, or we literally took the topic from the Rasputin video with the same name. And as I said, these are all notes, so you will be discovering our opinions on the matter. At least our past self opinions alongside you, dear listeners.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's kind of also inspired by the fact that, you know, in a community like How Long to Beat, we're all pretty enthusiastic gamers and we've been playing games for a while. We've probably played lots of different games and stuff, but it's easy to forget how much knowledge you already have and that is assumed that other people who perhaps have never even touched video games before, maybe they don't know or would get confused by, even down to some very simple stuff, which we'll get into. But I think Paula and I have both had the experience of playing with family members and perhaps others who really have no idea about video games or are young and growing up and learning. So we've got a few experiences of our own to kind of talk about.
So yeah, I feel like the first experience I want to kind of share with everyone, and that also gave me an idea for another episode. Like, write that down. The new generation of gamers, because of how different games are right now than many years ago. But anyway, So I got a nephew. He's currently 13 years old, and partially because he kind of either lived with us for the first year of his existence, and with us I refer to my dad, my mom, and I, and that combined with the many visits he gave us in the following years, he kind of got interested in whatever I was doing, so he would mimic what I was doing at the time, either drawing, reading not so much, he was too little, but he was very almost enthralled by the things happening on the screen as I was playing video games. So his first gaming experience was pretty much Mario Kart 8. And that was possible because of the amount of handicaps the game has. So you are able to activate a little antenna, so the person who's playing won't be smashing through walls and stuff like that. There's an auto acceleration thingy. And I feel like there's an extra thing, so the game usually tells you when you're going backwards, but in this case, when you have a certain handicap activated, it will make it so you always follow the path in the right direction. Cool. So he started playing with some of those handicaps, and as he got better and better, he was able to play without those and pretty much kick everyone's ass but mine. As he grew older, he would get into other party games like Super Smash Bros. Though that was when he was a lot older. But he really enjoyed playing Super Mario Wii U. So given that he really liked playing on my Wii U at the time, and then he was obligated to be a part of it, far apart from it, because he went back to living with his parents. My dad ended up giving him a Wii U for one of his birthdays, so he was a happy camper. And he got a Super Mario Bros. Wii U and the Super Luigi something Wii U, and he loved every hell out of it. And since it was just 3D side-scroller platformer, even though it was very difficult for him at first, he got very quickly used to the controllers because kids are sponges.
True, very true.
Yeah. Eventually, he got into Minecraft. The camera was a thing for him, but again, he got used to it incredibly fast. Minecraft has like a creative mode, so he was able to build stuff without getting killed. And eventually, my sister would play it with him too. So it was like kind of like a bonding experience between the two, and it was good for him to like gain those motor skills that he would use in the later games that he got into. It took a while, but he got into Breath of the Wild. Like I think it was like 3 years after the release of the game, and it was the cutest thing, like having him call me to my phone and talking about his adventures, and then him walking me through the things he found.
Nice.
So I would just fire up my game and follow his instructions, even though I knew some of the secrets that he was finding. But yeah. Well, finally, Final Fantasy is currently his favorite series because he likes like light horror games.
Nice.
And he's obsessed with it, like to the point that he's obsessed with it. He read the books even, and he doesn't like how to doesn't like to read. So that's something.
Is that also something like his friends are into as well? Like, I feel like that kind of age group maybe would be into that sort of thing.
So funnily enough, I don't remember how he heard about Five Nights at Freddy, but I let him play in my computer because I had it. And he really loved the game. And he kind of like went quiet for a while about it. He still liked it, but he wasn't like really obsessed. That's the point to the point he is now. So the thing is, the Five Nights at Freddy movie came out this year, and that was the catalyst for an entire year of everyone in his school being obsessed with the games. So he was like the expert at his class about Five Nights at Freddy's, because at that point he played like every game, watched videos about the various theories about the game, and was starting to read the books. So yeah.
Nice. Cool. It's interesting as well because like you're talking about your nephew who's younger, and my first thing, which if anyone's listened to other episodes will know that I've been playing games with my sister, who has only just started playing games this year, and she's older than me, and I was born in 1982, so you can do those maths. But she's a couple of years older than me, and her learning stuff is very different to what I imagine a kid would experience. Because
I imagine
it basically started with the Harry Potter game coming out, because my sister's a huge Harry Potter fan, and she knew I had a PlayStation 5, so she's like, "Oh, can I come around to your house and play it? Like, I'll buy it, but I'll come around to your house and play it." And I'm like, "Why don't I just lend you my PlayStation? You can borrow it for a while and play it, and, you know, I'll live without it. I've got other things I can play on." And so I did that, and she borrowed it, and she played the Harry Potter game because she just loves Harry Potter and everything about Harry Potter. And what that game has, which has what ended up being basically a saving grace for her as a new player. And this is a new player. Like, she has not played video games before, period. So we play a lot of board games and that sort of stuff, but holding a controller and looking at a screen is not something she has ever done before. So this is all very new to her. And one thing that Harry Potter has, which I have later found out a lot of other games have in their difficulty modes, is a story mode, which basically means you cannot die. Everything is super, super easy in combat sense, but you get to just kind of play through the game, and you can still kind of get close to being defeated, but it's really hard to do. But for her, as a brand new player, it still felt really challenging because there's a lot of combat in the game where you fight enemies and stuff, but basically every hit you take from them does barely anything to your health in story mode, but every hit you make on an enemy does like heaps more than it normally would. So basically you don't have to attack them as much, and you can take your time, because as they're attacking you and you're trying to think about just what button do I press to attack them back, you're not going to die because it's very slow and just kind of chips away at you very, very slowly. It'll eventually get you down to 0, but it's so much longer than even on the easiest difficulty above that. So that was perfect for my sister, because one of the first things that she struggled with was the controller itself. And just the idea, like something that seems so simple and laughable to any other gamer, but using the left stick to move around and using the right stick to look around. That took a while. Like, it took a good couple of months for her to really get into moving around in 3D space using a controller like a DS5 PlayStation controller. Because that whole idea of moving somewhere but also having to point where you want to move to or looking at things just was not a natural thing that happened in her brain. And so she'd move somewhere, but she'd she'd be looking one direction and basically moving to the side because she knew she had to go that way without ever changing the direction of where she's looking, even though there's stuff happening off where she can't see. And then she'd stop and then have to actually think, I need to turn around, and use the other stick to stand in place and like turn around. So it was this really clunky kind of process that, it's kind of like, I think of it like driving a car. If anyone drives a manual, you've got to like balance your clutch and your accelerator and everything all together. And when you first do it, it's really difficult, and you stall and everything, and you bunny hop and you just mess it all up. But now I've been driving for like 20, 30 years, and I don't even think about it. Like, it's not even something that enters my brain. It just happens. And it's the same with like game controls and stuff. If I pick up a game and it's like a third person kind of setup, I don't even think about what I'm doing with my sticks. I just start doing it. So it took a while for her to kind of get used to that sort of stuff, where it's more conceptual in that way. Like, as in, yes, okay, you push these buttons to do it, but you also have to think of it in that sense of, like when we move through space as humans, we don't think I need to look to my left because I'm going to go left or whatever. Like, you just kind of do it because you naturally, instinctively know how to do it. So that was like, it sounds really simple, and I'm kind of laboring on the same point, but that was like the biggest barrier to entry for her, was figuring out how to just move around in 3D space with these sticks that she's never used before. And I showed her, I inverted the controls as well, just in case that was helping, and uninverted them, and basically got her to see what felt right and what felt natural. And the other thing that ties in with that as well was like moving around and judging how far her character was from something else in the environment. So even just walking up to something and picking it up, like, I, as a gamer, would probably run into it until I stop and go, yep, I'm there. Whereas she'd like go near it and then push a button and be like, oh, why aren't I picking that up? And I'm like, oh, you got like another meter to go, kind of thing. Or basic platforming and stuff, like judging those sorts of distances and things took a while for her to get used to, purely because, she's never done that sort of thing before. So yeah, that was really interesting, just getting used to the actual controller, let alone the game, but just getting used to that control setup where, I know as a gamer who's played games for a long time, if I pick up a new game, I barely have to look at, the options page which tells you what the controls are. Because I know the gamepad well enough, I can just kind of mash them all quickly and go, oh, that's what that does, that's what that does, blah, blah, blah. Let alone the tutorial telling me. But 9 times out of 10, there's this common kind of setup with games anyway, especially action games and stuff. Like, often it's either going to be like, your triggers do your attacks, or your face buttons do your attacks, one or the other kind of thing. Or like, usually it's your L buttons are your defensive ones and your R buttons are your offensive ones. You just know that because you've played lots of games. But you don't have to think, oh, there's actually, R2 is actually a button that exists. And it will do something if I push it. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that my sister was struggling with initially. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience as I kind of helped her through it, because I, tried to teach her baby steps and, to have some patience, and, she will get used to it. And yeah, sure enough, as she played more and more of the Harry Potter game, which thankfully is pretty easy and straightforward, she did get a good feel for the gamepad and start to understand where things were, at least for that game.
Yep.
Getting into other
And for
games
that console.
was the next step. Well, we haven't even looked at other consoles or anything. Probably going to stick with just the PlayStation, because since then she's bought her own PlayStation because she's played enough of mine to think, oh, I actually enjoy this and I'm going to get my own. And, you know, I've basically put my account on hers, so she's got access to all my PlayStation Plus games and whatever, so she doesn't have to buy anything. She can just try different games. So yeah, that's kind of where we started with ours as well. But yeah, then she started getting into different games, but I kind of want to leave that for a second and hear about where your brother-in-law got to with games.
Okay, so when I talk about my brother-in-law, I mainly talk about my nephew's father. So my nephew has tried to get him into games a couple of times and failed miserably. Like one time we were just sitting at the couch and my nephew was playing Fortnite, and he was like, "Hey, Dad, play this round. I have to do something else." And he was like, "I don't know what the fuck to do with this." So first of all, he gets very dizzy either with third person or first person games, mainly like because of the camera that is the beginning of his existence. He doesn't compute the fact that he has to control the camera and the movement at the same time. So it's in line with what your sister is experiencing. He says that controls aren't intuitive at all. Like he looks at the controller, he's like, "What? How? Why? Why is this a thing?" Though he managed to play the new Super Mario Bros. On 3DS. At the time, my sister had a 3DS and my nephew had a 3DS, so they kind of like play together on separate 3DSs and just share stuff. And probably my nephew told him like tricks and stuff. And only other game that I heard him that I've heard that he has tried and played and enjoyed is FIFA, or formerly known as FIFA. It is now FC. But pretty much gets overwhelmed by everything else in existence.
Yeah.
So the other interesting thing is that is someone who used to play games that doesn't play games anymore, and that is the case with my mom. So it seems to be that my mother used to play on arcades, and she liked to play Pac-Man and Tetris, and she was particularly good at Pac-Man. So she has had that interest in games and that curiosity, and she sees how things progress, and it's like, holy crap, this. Back in my day, we had like huge ass pixels and a button and a stick, and that's all. So she's kind of like the main reason why we were allowed to play games in the first place in my household, because my father always thought of games as a waste of time and kids games in general. So she didn't play with us games when we were little, but she liked to watch us play video games. In particular, she really liked watching my older sisters, play Ocarina of Time. Because it was like one of the first times that in the games that she used to buy for us, where she saw like an actual story and dialogue and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like cutscenes and stuff. So she was like very interested in that. And that those memories were actually the reason why I got my 3DS with Ocarina of Time 3D, but that is a story for another day. She says that games nowadays have like too many features and there's way too many fucking buttons, and she doesn't know where to start when it comes like to gaming, and she almost fears that it's gonna be like too complicated for her to learn.
I think that's that's a good point, because as you mentioned, like when Pac-Man and that were out, like you think Ataris back in the day, you had a joystick with one button on it, and that's all you had to get used to.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, in the arcade you'd have a joystick and nothing else on some games, like especially like Pac-Man or something. Like you didn't need buttons; you just did a direction. And so that's immediately a lower barrier than a controller that's covered in buttons and a game that has 50 things telling you what to do.
If you see the Xbox controller, which I just took out of the drawer, you don't not only have like two sticks and the shoulder buttons, you have two extra buttons hidden in the sticks that most people wouldn't realize they're there unless you're told them.
Absolutely.
Plus, the D-pad and the action buttons are four, and the ones that you never use that are the I think the screenshot and the menu button.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you chose something like this to someone who hasn't played games in a very long time, and they just explode. It's like, what the fuck do I do with this?
Well, and then you've got the PlayStation controller as well, which has the big old touchpad that also acts as like two buttons or one button depending on the game. It changes depending on the game. So yeah, that can be way overwhelming compared to just seeing a joystick, I think. Let alone other stuff, like to get back to my sister, and as she kind of playing through Hogwarts and getting used to that, got her kind of used to the controller, so she felt more comfortable in moving around in third person space and all this kind of stuff. And from that, something my sister likes to do, which she does with everything like movies and TV and stuff, she'll get on a Facebook group and be like, hey, I really like this, tell me what else I can get into. And so she said, she found a good Facebook group where there are other people who was like her, like new gamers who didn't really understand much about gaming but enjoyed the Hogwarts game, playing on story mode. What can you recommend that's like that? And a lot of people recommended playing again on story mode, but playing Horizon, the first Horizon game. I forget what the subtitle is, but
Horizon something Dawn.
Yeah, Zero Dawn.
Zero Dawn, yeah.
Yeah. Which is obviously, Sony exclusive, I think, but cool. And it's got a story mode though. So again, very easy kind of combat and not so challenging in the gameplay department, but another big open world game with a story you can follow. She recognized some of the voice actors even because she likes watching people like Ashley Birch and stuff play D&D. So that's something she was already into. But yeah, she eventually got into the story a lot because it was a good story. It's also a very good game, so that helps. But I was talking to her about the game and she was talking about, the combat and all that kind of stuff and fighting some of the bigger enemies. And where for me, it was like my experience of the game was that it was this hugely tactical, challenging combat thing where you really have to plan out how you're going to pick apart this robot, huge giant dinosaur thing and, survive while you do it and use all of your arsenal to its best ability kind of thing. And it might take a while as well. Like you could be fighting things for a long time. For her, it was like, no, just kind of spam it until it's dead because that's, what you get when you play on story mode, which is cool because anything more difficult, and she would have found it way overwhelming. Like even that spamming it till it's dead for her felt like really challenging. And there was one thing that she learned in Hogwarts was even the idea of dying isn't permanent and isn't going to ruin your game. You just kind of either load a save file or you get put back to the previous checkpoint. And, for the first few hours or however long playing Hogwarts, she was terrified of messing up and dying and getting really, really stressed every time there was any combat and all this kind of stuff, until I basically forced her just to like walk off a ledge and die to just show her that it's not the end of the world and you'll just respawn and continue on your way. So there's no point getting so stressed about it all. Because she was like, oh my God, if I die, I'm done kind of thing. And yeah, but it was kind of interesting because the other things that she would encounter was stuff like things that we kind of take for granted, like recognizing when a dev is kind of telling you to go somewhere or how something will react. Like the classic thing that a lot of gamers I think will recognize is you see a red barrel, you know that if you shoot it, it's going to explode and probably hurt people around you. If you've never played a game before, that might be kind of new information that you don't know. So yeah, one of the things that my sister did encounter when playing Horizon was she was stuck at a part where she basically got lost when it's inside one of the interior facility kind of parts of the map, and she didn't know how to progress, like which way to go. And so she waited for me to next time we caught up, and she showed me where she was up to and said, "Oh, can you figure it out for me? Because I'm just totally lost and I keep going round and round in circles." And I just had a quick look and went, "Oh yeah, you got to go over there." And she's like, "What? No, I've been over there. You know, you're an idiot." I'm like, "No, trust me, you go over there." And so she went over there, and sure enough, there was a path. There was like a tunnel that you had to go into or something. She's like, "Well, how did you know that?" And I'm like, "Because if you look around, there's like basically arrows pointing you there, because there's like big lights in triangles and they're all pointing in that direction. And the tunnel itself is kind of lit up differently to the rest of the level. So when you scan your eyes around the level, as someone who's used to looking at video games, you kind of go, oh, there's the path forward, because it kind of stands out. And I know that that's something devs do to assist players finding their way, is they use lighting and stuff to basically light something up and go, this is it, dummy. And, you know, a lot of us kind of pick up on that because we've seen it so many times. And that was one thing I taught my sister, was like, hey, if it's well lit, it's probably where you need to go. So keep that in mind if you're ever lost. Look for the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some sense, it's like when my boyfriend was playing Dark Souls 1, I was like just watching him play. And he was like, well, this looks like the correct path. I'm going to go to the other way to get all the goodies and loot and stuff like that.
Yep.
And it was like the main path was either more clear out, or there was like a clear chain of enemies on there. So it was like, yeah, the enemies are guiding me, like they're protecting the main path, so the other path must be the way where the loot is.
Yeah, it's like starting a 2D platformer and your character's facing right. So you go, okay, I'm going to go left.
Yeah, definitely.
Because obviously they want me to go right, so I'm just going to go the other way to double check that first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's all those little things that, you know, as gamers, we recognize all those things like, yeah, my character is facing that way, so maybe I should go that way. Especially like if you start a level off and your character kind of gets up or, you know, does whatever, and then it kind of lets you take control. The way that your character is facing is probably where the game wants you to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, naturally, those of us who are used to this kind of stuff turn around and go the other way first on purpose. But we know that as well. We know that there's often hidden stuff off the main path. So, you know, there's that kind of knowledge as well. But the other thing that I kind of wanted to add to this kind of train of thought with my sister was she eventually got onto playing the Spider-Man games on PlayStation because there's a couple of things that she's really, after trying out some other games as well, there's a few things that she's realized she likes, which is either an IP that she's already aware of, so something like Hogwarts or Spider-Man, or lately she's been playing The Witcher because she loves the TV show, and Witcher 3, I should say, not the first two games. But
that would be rough.
Yeah, I find the first game rough. So, so yeah, games that she recognizes the IP, or like Horizon, have a very solid, good story to them that she can get sucked into and really follow. She loves big open world games where you can kind of go around and go at your own pace mostly. And she loves games, obviously, that aren't too challenging, like she feels like she can actually do stuff with. However, she hasn't been playing everything at story mode. She's moved on to like easy mode now. So she's getting more confident with that sort of stuff and happy to take on bigger challenges. But one of the things that she got stuck with on the Spider-Man game was not reading the on-screen, like the UI prompts.
Oh.
So she was playing away, and she was still very much in the tutorial section of the game where they introduced new things to you. And again, she got stuck, and she's like, the game keeps wanting me to like go to this base of bad guys and take them all out kind of thing. But I'm finding it really hard. Every time I go in there, I get my ass kicked, and, you know, I don't progress. So I had a look at it with her, and I'm like, oh, this is a stealth mission. And she's like, oh, what do you mean? And I'm like, so the game wants you to approach this particular part of the map as a stealth thing. So you want to hide and be careful and meticulous and patient and take out one person at a time, not just jump in and start fighting everybody. Because there's like snipers on the roof and there's dudes on the ground. And if you just jump in, the sniper's going to shoot you. Or if you just start fighting the snipers, then all the dudes on the ground are going to bugger off or whatever. So much like in the Batman games, this game wants you to go around and stealthily take out dudes one at a time and where no one knows until you're down to maybe one or two guys that you can go in and just fight.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh. And I showed her kind of how to do that by just playing through it a little bit and then handing the controller back to her. And yeah, she nailed it. She's like, after understanding that concept, she's like, oh, okay. And then just basically cruised through and succeeded and managed to progress through the game. But there was also a big thing on the screen, well, big thing to me. There was a UI element right next to the quest basically saying, do this in stealth. I forget what the actual wording was, but that's the message it was giving you. And I'm like, you got to read this stuff, man. Like, the things that appear on screen often appear for a reason. So, you know, I know we all ignore tutorial messages a lot and that kind of thing as, you know, seasoned, experienced gamers, but we still probably pay attention to a lot more than we even think we do because we're used to getting information from all these different ways in a game. And often it can be just a little UI element saying, do this. And you're like, okay. And so yeah, that's kind of like how she's progressed. And these days, like I say, she's played through both Horizon games. She's playing The Witcher 3 now. She's playing, even that, like, Witcher 3 confused her because it's very different to games like Horizon or Spider-Man or Hogwarts, where it doesn't just give you a waypoint to go to at all times. So last time I spoke to her about it, she was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but the only quest I know that I have to do is like a level 3 quest and I'm only level 2. So I keep getting my ass kicked every time I try and do it. And I'm like, well, surely there'd be other things you can do to help you level up and stuff. Like, you know, I don't think it's a badly designed in that way. And so I had a look at the game, and I've never played Witcher 3 either, so I don't really know what's going on. But I had a look, and sure enough on the map, there's all these question marks all over the map. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I did a quick Google, and sure enough, they're quests that she can go do, like side quests and things. And they're not all going to be at her level, but a lot of them will be, because the area she's in is obviously designed for starting out in those first few levels. And I'm like, oh, you've just got to go find those question marks. And she's like, oh, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, let's go check it out. So we went and checked out some of the question marks. And yeah, some of them are just locations that you can find. They're not all quests necessarily. Some of them are like enemies that come off a contract board, and someone said, I want you to go kill this enemy for me. But it's too high level anyway, so she's got to come back later. But there's enough there of stuff that she can do and can approach and do at her level that it's like, okay, this is what you should be doing. But because it's not holding your hand as much, and it's kind of in a good way, I guess, for a lot of gamers probably love this about Witcher 3, you have to kind of find your own way. And it doesn't just say, here's the big waypoint to follow, dumbass. It just kind of goes, figure it out, go wherever you want. That is a challenge then for my sister, who's used to the big waypoints going, this is where you go.
Yeah.
And she's not used to having to actually, you know, path it out herself in that sense. So yeah, it's really interesting seeing her, like, because nowadays she started playing about when Hogwarts came out, which I think was in like February or March of this year. So by now she's pretty much down with the controller. Like, she's comfortable with it and knows how to use it. She's kind of comfortable with very much the Horizon games because she's played both of them and very much enjoyed them. And she's even like got into a bit of trophy hunting and stuff, like doing extra stuff to get some more trophies because she's found she's a bit of a completionist and loves to do everything, which is fun because, yeah, she'll often look at my trophy list and go, how'd you get that one? I can't figure it out. And so, you know, that's fun. But yeah, it's amazing how many things, like just little things like I mentioned before, like even just seeing like a red barrel or something in a game, we all know that that's probably going to explode and hurt anyone standing nearby it.
Yeah. Or like in Zelda games, like when you see a wall that it's a little bit too funky, you know you can bomb it.
Yeah, well, those sorts of things too. Like Horizon's a good one. It does the thing that like Uncharted does and Tomb Raider does, where if it's a ledge you can grab on, it's
It's
fucking
yellow,
obvious
no? Yeah.
because, yeah, it happens to be painted a different color to the rest of the whole scene. And I can't remember what they use in Horizon. It might even be white, but I think that's Tomb Raider. I can't remember. But it's kind of pretty freaking obvious. Like, anything that color means you can climb on it. But it took her a second to recognize that as well.
I think that's one way where Breath of the Wild is kind of like more welcoming, where if you want to try something out, you probably are able to do the thing, and you're not restricted on movement, which is both a good and a bad thing, because you can go anywhere you like, but you can go anywhere you like.
Yeah.
So you can get very quickly in trouble if you're not careful enough. But the game is usually like, well, this is actually one of the more punishing Zelda games, but the game is like not punishing enough like to let you go if you play your cards right or just run the fuck away from it. Let's see, it's a line now. Yeah, those things with like so there's like this octopus enemy that is usually on the water, though there are like some that are like on the ground or in the grass that called octoroks, and they have the aim of like a sniper that has been well trained in war. So if you don't kill those, you're gonna get low health real quick, especially since you start with only 3 hearts. They aren't as aware of their surroundings as Lionels, though. So in the early part of the game, early like within very big air quotes, one of the first places you're like encouraged to visit by the way the story is told is Sora's domain, and there's a quest where you have to get shock arrows or like electricity arrows from this half horse, half human, half lion thing called a Lionel. And not only it has like very good hearing, it also has like very good aim. Mm-hmm. So I was behind a rock that had a puddle of water, and I stepped on the puddle of water by accident, and the Lionel just turned to the rock, aimed to the sky with an arrow, and it landed on Link. So yeah,
nice.
Like those things are fast because they have the body of a horse, so it's kind of like a lion center or something like that. Mm-hmm. So if you try to run and you are not quick enough, you can probably get chopped in half by it. But also you have the possibility of teleporting to anywhere you've been to previously, like mainly shrines and divine beasts, so you can get out of that tight situation if you remember to do it.
Yeah.
But if you try to do it like by more like traditional means, like running away, the Lionel is probably just gonna chop you in half.
Nice.
So yeah, it is very forgiving in a way that you can easily get yourself out of trouble, but you can as easily get yourself in trouble and forget how to get out of trouble.
Well, it's interesting as well because I'm kind of in the opposite kind of thinking of that, like with my sister going on Facebook groups and getting recommendations from people about games to play and this sort of stuff. One of the recommendations she got was to play Star Wars Jedi Survivor, or the first one.
I don't know which one is the first one, but
I can't remember which. But of the new Star Wars games, not the most recent one, the first one, Fallen Order. That's the one. The newest one is Survivor. The first one's Fallen Order. Okay, so yeah, she got recommended to play Star Wars Fallen Order, which I have played. And as soon as she told me that, I'm like, you are joking, aren't you? And I'm like, who told you that? Like, moron? Because that game has more in common with that's got more in common with Dark Souls than like story mode Hogwarts. And she's like, oh no, well, it's got a story mode in it as well. And apparently it's, cool. And because she's into Star Wars anyway, so she's like, oh, well, see how it goes. And again, I had it in my library, so easy enough for her to try it out because it's free. And she got probably about halfway through the game before going, actually, yeah, this is not for me. Similarly, because she likes Lord of the Rings, she tried the Lord of the Rings game, which again I'm going to have to quickly
Is
Google.
it Shadow of Mordor?
Is that the first one?
I don't know which one is the first one.
So yeah, because she likes Lord of the Rings, she tried Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, because again, I said to her, yeah, it might be a bit too much for you, but it's an open world game, again, using an IP that she really likes and is familiar with anyway. So she tried playing it, but again, the part that she struggled with was all the extra complexity, like the whole Nemesis system, which is a very central part to that game, and the ins and outs of different combat, where you can't just necessarily button mash for every single enemy. You have to use combos or use different abilities depending on the enemy and all that kind of stuff. So it was just a bit too challenging and complex for her. So she didn't keep playing that, but that's one that she always says, oh, I really liked it, but I'll play it again when I know what I'm doing. And it's not for me right now. And it reminded me of my dad, who will be the last point in this kind of section. Because my dad has never been like a hardcore gamer, but he's always played games. He's one of those people who very casually has always played games his whole life, pretty much, because he's a bit of a nerd. He's a sciencey kind of guy. And to the point when he was in university, he wrote a computer program on punch cards, which, very 70s of him. But he's always been into that sort of stuff. So, he's always been into having computers around. That's why I had computers to play with when I was a kid and that kind of thing, because of him and his interest in it. And even now to this day, like, he's still got a PlayStation 4 that he plays games on, and he'll play a whole bunch of different games. Like, he's way more advanced than my sister is, but he has his limits because he's very, very casual and nowhere near as much of a gamer as, say, I am or we are or that kind of thing. And one of the things he struggles with is thinking of like combos and stuff in Shadow of Mordor. He's played Shadow of Mordor, but it was very challenging for him. And because again, he's a button masher. Like, he likes if I'm ever with him when he's playing a game, all I hear is like tap 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 tap, because that's his way of attacking something, is just tap it till it's dead. And like, there's no timing, there's no like combo, there's no special moves or anything. It's just button mash, button mash, button mash. Cool, I survived. And that's cool because that works for him. He enjoys himself. He manages to do well enough to play most games he wants to play. But then there's other games, like, I thought, well, he's really into playing golf in real life and is a decent golf player. So I thought, hey, let's play some PGA Tour, Tiger Woods style on the PlayStation. Because I've got some friends who I used to play that with quite a bit because that's what they were into. And, anything's fun if you're playing with friends. And so I thought, oh, Dad, you're into golf. Let's play some golf games. And we played one game and he hated every single moment of it because it was not realistic at all. It had nothing to do with real golf as far as he was concerned. And it was just completely ridiculous. Because in real golf, you have to think about your approach up the fairway and you have a shot that gets you far enough. And then you might really take a careful shot for the next shot because it's a lot harder and all that kind of thing. Whereas I'm just there hitting everything as hard as I can, smashing the X button to like give it extra strength so it boosts it. And I'm like, it's a really long hole, which would normally take you 5 shots. Like, it's a par 5 and I get it on the green in one shot because I'm just like video gaming it. And and he's just like, that's just fucking terrible. Like, I don't want to play this stupid shit. Like, this is ridiculous. There's nothing like golf. and I kind of think, yeah, I guess that's probably true. But because I don't play golf, I'm down with the video game. Like, and it's similar to, there's a game which is, again, this is a little bit off topic, but similar kind of experience where there's a game called like PC Builder Simulator or something.
Oh, it's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you like make PCs for people. So you buy all the parts and you put it together in a case and off you go. as someone who's built PCs since I was a teenager, that game frustrated the shit out of me because of the parts where it's unrealistic, such as one of the simplest thing is memory, like RAM, memory sticks.
Yeah.
Anyone who, if you don't know, that's cool, but anyone who's built a PC or knows anything about hardware is that each motherboard has its own layout for memory. There's usually 4 slots on a dual channel memory system, but you have to kind of lay them out properly. Like you wouldn't put both if you had 2 sticks, you wouldn't put them in slot 1 and 2. You'd put them in slot 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it would be different. Like you might put them in 1 and 4, depending on how the motherboard's configured. It depends. And there used to be, back in the day, there was also triple channel memory sticks. So triple channel memory sticks can't go into dual channel slots. You have to have a triple channel motherboard. Much like if you have a certain socket type for your CPU, it has to match the socket type on the motherboard. You can't just throw any old CPU in any old motherboard, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Very, very boring, nerdy shit. But in this game, PC Building Simulator, at least when I played it, I think they might have changed it since because they have added a lot to it. You could just throw any processor with any board and any RAM in any configuration on any board, and it didn't matter. And I'm just like, ugh.
But think about the compatibility of the pieces. God damn.
Well, but then I think maybe that's because I'm too close to the project. Like, at the same time, I enjoy like Car Mechanic Simulator. I know nothing about cars, so I feel like I'm learning things when I play that game. But I would guarantee any real mechanic who plays that game would probably go, what the fuck is going on here? So, that's kind of my point that I was trying to make, is in like my dad playing golf games, he just knows golf way too well. So to see it in game form, he's just like, this is not the same thing. This is completely different.
Gamer close to my hobbies.
Yeah. So anyway, it's been fun watching my sister kind of learn her way into things, because it kind of reminds you as well, like the kind of things that games don't teach you, that they just assume, such as, being able to identify the path forward, like with seeing a light at the end of a tunnel and going, okay, that's where I'm meant to be heading.
Yeah.
Simple things like that, which are kind of intuitive clues that most gamers probably pick up on, but new gamers really struggle with. Or to bring it back to, I think in one of those videos that I've seen on YouTube where they talk about the same sort of thing, there was one example that they gave where this dude who is a developer got his wife to play a game. And so the game loaded up and she's sitting there with the controller in her hands, and the game loads up and just kind of, she's sitting there with the controller in her hands and nothing's happening, and her character's just kind of standing on the screen ready to go. And the guy's like, so why aren't you doing anything? And she's like, well, I don't know how to do anything. I haven't been told anything. And the game hadn't said anything to her. It's just kind of like started her off. But because she'd never played many games before, she didn't know that, oh, you probably have to start moving around by pushing that left stick, or maybe have a look around by pushing that right stick. She didn't know anything. So she was waiting for the game to say, now's the time to do something.
Yeah.
And just something as simple as that can be a barrier for someone who doesn't really know what, or have any experience with what they're doing, which I think is interesting, and obviously a challenge for game designers, because the flip side of that is every gamer who skips every tutorial ever because, God, it's so boring, I have to do a tutorial. So, but the other part of this that we were thinking of, listener, without going too off topic, was what would you want to pass on to a new gamer? Like if you had a kid or someone who you wanted to get into gaming or you thought might be interested, someone, we're thinking mostly, I guess, someone who's young and learning rather than someone who's older and perhaps a little bit interested. Like, what would you pass on to a new gamer, and what kind of games would you recommend for them?
Well, it depends who's asking. It really depends who the fuck is asking here. Depending of the background a person has. Like, for example, when I got my my friend into otome games, I already knew that she liked, for example, anime, so she was probably okay with anime tropes. And she also has a crush on one or two like 2D husbandos over there. So for me, for her, since she also had interest in reading, and she actually has like a huge has collection of manga stuff, I assume that hey, this might be the game for you.
Yeah.
I actually like went and helped her getting a Vita, because at the time Ottoman games were mostly developed for Vita, and then I helped her getting a Switch when the jump was made to Switch by the developers. Of course, I wouldn't even try to recommend that to some family members, like my sister. Like maybe one of my sisters wouldn't judge me as harshly, but the other sister would be like, "So this is what you've been playing." And of course, I'm not like, no one is gonna be like catch me like playing things like Olympia Sore, which is like one of the more serious Otome games there, because that would be the end of my social life among my family and like friends that don't vibe with that shit. On the other hand, if I know they're like they want, I don't know, their kids or something like to play video games, I would probably direct them to a Nintendo console, because that is like the most family friendly one and has like the widest variety of things that kids can play. Mainly because of how they have like many IPs like we talk about in that Change My Mind episode. But also it is less risky for them if they accidentally like open the eShop and try to find something. It is less risky for them to get to know games that aren't like as kid friendly, especially if you put in like under control or something like that. So at the very least, like when they're talking about a console with friends, the friends will probably have not played like the more dark and gritty games that are available, like I don't know, The Witcher 3 or something like that. Meanwhile, my nephew has heard like one of his friends is able to play Grand Theft Auto 5, and he's asking his mother, why can't I play Grand Theft Auto 5? I had to convince him that even though he would be okay with the violence, there are aspects of the game that aren't suitable for his young age and mentality.
Yep.
And I had to home that, like really bring that point home, in the sense of, I know you probably wouldn't vibe with this game because I know you, and probably your kid, like your friend, either like got his parents to get the game without knowing what it was about, or that kid in particular is like considered like mature enough by the parents to play the game, which my nephew is not.
Yeah. Well, and there's some really fucked up shit in Grand Theft Auto 5, so
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, probably not, because he sees like in the news like every day shit happening, but
yeah.
there are things that aren't in the news that happen in Grand Theft Auto, so it's like, yeah, but I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because here in Australia, only I want to say maybe 10 years ago, but it's probably more like 15 or so, we got a R rating, which is an adult rating for video games. Before that, the highest rating was what we have, which is a MA15, which means you have to be at least 15 years old. So what that meant was that for games that were very adult and would otherwise get an R rating, such as Grand Theft Auto, it would mean that either the game would be released as a 15, so accessible to people who maybe are a bit young and shouldn't have access to it, or it would get refused classification entirely and be effectively banned from the country. So it would be illegal to acquire and play that. And I ran into that trouble with Mortal Kombat 9 because it got refused classification at the time because there was no adult classification and it was way too violent for kids. So it just got refused classification, so it didn't get released in Australia initially. And I ordered it from overseas because I like Mortal Kombat. And after I acquired it, I realized that I could have got fined for importing banned goods or whatever.
Oh, no.
But, you know, we won't tell anyone about that. Because then a few years later, there was a lot of campaigning from gamers and stuff because it was essentially people not understanding that games are not always for children and that adults do play games. And so adult content in games is actually okay as long as it's classified correctly, such as with movies or anything else. If there's fucked up shit in a game, that's okay. Sure, you don't want kids seeing it, but there are actually adults who perhaps want to play that game or whatever. So nowadays we do have an 18 plus rating, thanks to some heavy campaigning. But the thing that I find interesting about all of that, which what you were getting at with choosing games for kids and like people being able to play Grand Theft Auto or something, even with an R18 rating, plenty of parents still don't understand that games are not just for kids.
Yeah.
And they'll go buy the adult game to give to their 13-year-old at home, which sure, it's up to people's discretion, and I'm not one to, I don't want to police people too much and tell them they're doing something wrong. But maybe if something has got a lot of violence and weird fucked up shit, like there's torture stuff in Grand Theft Auto 5, and there's obviously a lot of sexual content and that sort of thing as well, which, obviously different people have different opinions about. But maybe your 13-year-old kid is not ready to understand these things in the same objective way that adults do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
By the way, I was looking at age ratings here in Chile because since I usually either import most of the games I get because of my games, or I either get them like from other places that import games and get them cheaper. I totally forgot that we actually have an age rating thing in Chile. So the thing is that games usually get wrapped into like this plastic thingy. I kid you not. Let me take this one here, like this paper thingy. The age rating thing is like this big, like compared to the game case, it is absolutely ridiculous. I think some places have like a little smaller kind of things, but from what I remember, they're like this big, like half of the game case on Switch, and it has like 3 fingers left on the bottom or something like that.
Yeah, for listeners, Paula's example is basically taking up most of the case, so you can't miss it.
Yeah. So the thing is that we have the age rating of, well, especially ER, or especialmente recomendado, which is especially recommended, which is pretty much for all ages, and it's like the equivalent on ESRB is like the early childhood or small children kind of thing. And it's PEGI 3. And for there's TE, which is toda edad or all ages, which is pretty much everyone, E for everyone. And this is where it's kind of like interesting. We have an 8+ category, which is, well, 8 years or more. And that kind of like is kind of like the E10+. And then we have 14+. Like this is interesting because now that I'm seeing like the ratings like next to each other, so the ESRB says 10+, Chile says 7+, Europe says 7, like 8+ or 7. Meanwhile, we had the 14+ games that are like teen rated games, which is 12 on PEGI. And then we have 2 categories that are 18+. It can either signify RP or adult only games, because we don't have the difference between those two. And since adult only games don't get released on consoles, like we don't have to care, I guess. So yeah, I totally forgot that this was a thing. Let me see if I can actually have a picture. Okay, so I think they made it smaller. It's way more decent now than in the 3DS days. So let me. And when did this start? I forgot. Like just one day it started, and that's it. Okay, sending it on Discord. So yeah, the level isn't as monstrous as I remember it being, but at some point it was like quite stupid.
It's still pretty prominent though.
Yeah, you can't really miss it.
No. It's taking up like a good quarter of the cover.
So yeah, like unless you're buying games in some other store that imports their own products and their products don't go through Nintendo Chile, or not Nintendo Chile, Nintendo Latin America Nintendo. If if the games don't go through that, then you don't get that stupid label in your games. But I think we kind of like went on a big tangent here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of the reason I was thinking about classifications is because here, pretty much the R rating is the only one that's like legally enforceable.
Yeah.
As in, you can get fined if you provide adult goods to a minor. So, if you do sell a movie ticket, an R-rated movie ticket to someone who's 15, you can actually get fined for that. Same as if you sell a R-rated game to someone who's under 18, you can get fined for that as well. So it's actually a legal kind of requirement. And so often I kind of like it as an adult because it's a good way, it's a good defense kind of when you've got a kid demanding something because their friends got it. It's like, well, actually, it's illegal.
Actually,
so,
yeah.
Even though, yeah, sure, it's up to everyone's discretion as to whether their kid can handle that or not and interpret what's going on. But because there's other things like, I remember when I was a kid, I saw some stuff or I played games or saw movies which were probably well above my age range. But none of it sank in. Like, it all just went over the top of my head. And I didn't actually pick up on any of the fucked up shit because I was just a kid going, la, 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 this is fun. So, but yeah, when I think of like, if I had a kid, because I think if I had my own child and what games I'd expose them to, I think I'd probably just stick with mostly kind of educational stuff or things that I thought they'd learn something in. Like Minecraft, I think, is a fantastic example because, you have to be creative. You have to kind of plan things out together. Even if you're playing with your friends, if you want to accomplish something, you've got to kind of work together and work in teams and perhaps gather resources. Or if you're in creative mode, even just thinking creatively and you're making something, even if it is in a game world. And, there've been studies and everything that shows that kind of stuff is actually good for kids' brains because it teaches them how to do stuff that's kind of fundamental. But then from having friends who have kids, I know that they approach games very differently to the way adults do.
Yeah.
And such as Minecraft being a good example, like my friends' kids who play Minecraft, they might spend like 15 minutes working on something like, hey, we're going to build this castle or something. And they'll kind of get it half done and then they'll just be like, fuck it. And they'll spend like hours just doing nothing, like just fucking around and joking with each other and exploring the map and just not really doing anything. But that's cool because they're having fun and they're, being social and whatever. But it might not be as intensely educational as you kind of hope it would be.
Definitely. It's hard for kids to get into educational games, in my opinion. Like, it's hard to make a good educational game that is fun.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why I like things like Assassin's Creed and stuff. Not that they would necessarily give that to a little kid, but things with like historical accuracy and stuff where you just learn stuff by playing it. It's not necessarily the intention, but the intention is that it's accurate and has real information in it.
Yeah.
Or that requires skills like, like problem solving skills or social skills or those sorts of things. Like I remember we talked about Paula ages ago about things that we've got from gamings and things we've learned from games. And you mentioned how you'd learned some social skills and things from games just by trying out different dialogue trees and things and seeing how game characters react and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Like, I don't want to, put you on the spot, but Like, I think that stuff's really cool, and that's the kind of thing that I would want to encourage people to do, because I think it's really useful.
Like it is a safe space where you can like just fuck up and not lose a friendship over it.
Yeah.
So it's actually like helped me a lot with learning empathy and stuff like that. Oh, another thing that I forgot that it is very, very important, and you may not understand because you're primarily an English speaker.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But if my friends want to play a game, but they are not necessarily fluent in English, that makes the amount of options that I can provide like very, very limited.
Yeah.
Like even though they might have the console, like for example, I don't know, a Switch, and maybe if they did like anime and stuff like that, I couldn't just say, hey, play this otome game that has very complex vocabulary. Or even like I can't tell my nephew to play Ace Attorney because Ace Attorney never released in Spanish.
Yeah, right.
Like I did find a patch, or like not a patch, a patch ROM of the game, so I have to check it to see if it is written in a way that it is understandable, because some fan projects can be like just Google Translate shit.
Yep.
But yeah, like that is another barrier for entry, the language itself.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously as a English speaker, I don't really encounter that, but outside of, I think, some like bad Japanese translations and stuff that I've seen, but or Russian, actually, there's a few games I've played where it's been like bad Russian translations from Russian to English, but I'm guessing that's way more common for languages other than English.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, I'd be fucked if it was in any language other than English. So,
Like for example, I think it was up until, I don't remember if it was X and Y or Sun and Moon. I want to say Sun and Moon, but people in China, well, first of all, if you live in China at that time, you wouldn't normally have access to video games because China have a very strict policy around those things. So, for example, one of the ways Nintendo got to release some games in China was making games available on like NVIDIA TVs and stuff like that. But since Pokemon couldn't like be properly released in China, then there was no Chinese version for Pokemon until Sun and Moon, where they added both the Chinese and simplified Chinese to the language options of the game. Even though I still think they can't get the games like normally if they walk into a store, but Chinese people who are able to import the game were very happy because they finally are able to play the game they grew up with in their language.
Yeah, that'd be rough. I mean, I know, again, not to go on a tangent, but I know I don't know if they still do it, but for a while China had a closed off internet, basically like an internet that was only their country. You couldn't actually go outside of the country on the internet, and so you couldn't even download, hacks or anything, or pirated versions.
Oh yeah, I remember. I actually went to China at one point. I think I was 15 or 16 or something like that.
Nice.
So a while ago, like 10 to 11 years ago. But anyway,
that's cool.
You couldn't go in on any social media thing, either Facebook, YouTube, anything, because of how the government has like this very strict rule. And I guess you could eventually get a VPN, and that way you can connect outside the country. But if you're in China, you're probably out of luck. You can't connect to anything that your country doesn't want you to connect to.
Yep, but yeah, we don't need to get too political.
Yeah,
but yeah, I feel for people who have trouble accessing stuff because of language barriers or geographical barriers or things like that, where it really shouldn't matter in this day and age. And perhaps that's something that AI will be good for in the future, is perhaps localization of stuff, because that's difficult to do, like translating everything to every language in the world. But maybe if AI is smart enough to pick up on nuance and colloquialisms and things, then it'll help in that sense. I don't know.
We still have a long way to go, though. Like, even, like, especially with languages with, like, Chinese and Japanese and maybe Russian even, because of how interesting the way of talking they have. Like, like they're not quite, like, especially Chinese, they're not quite literal. So, for example, like in the theater, like most of the movements in Tai Chi are called like the names are based like on a gesture. So, like I don't know, like stroking or brushing like a bird's feather or tail or something like that, or the white train flops its wings or something like that. So yeah, there's it is weird.
Yeah, well, and I think those sorts of translations require a lot of interpretation,
Yeah,
rather than
definitely.
just straight "this means this" kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, back to video games.
Yeah, we went on a big tangent there.
Well, I've mentioned all the stuff that my sister has got into and what has appealed for her. And if I was getting someone into games as an adult, I would probably look for, especially things that they're into anyway, such as my sister being a big fan of Harry Potter and really wanting to play the Hogwarts game.
Yeah,
And she'd read all about it and she knew what was happening. She knew way more about it than I did. And she's like, "Oh, you get to be your own student at Hogwarts, like 100 years before the actual movies take place, or the books take place rather. And you get to be in all that world and rah, 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 and it's so cool." And she's like sold on the story and the setting and everything. So then coming up against challenging things like how to use a controller, it's kind of worth getting through those barriers because she's into the material.
yeah, definitely.
Whereas other things I showed her, like I'm trying to think, there was a couple of other games that I did show her which was similar that she just never really got interested in because it was just some random game IP that she hadn't heard of before. Whereas all the stuff that she's gotten sold on, other than Horizon for that matter, but like Spider-Man, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, these are all things that she's into anyway. So
Kind of like a carrot and a stick.
Yeah. It's a good motivation to do it. And it was kind of like that's right, she did try playing the first of the new Tomb Raider games, which is different again, but it's like a kind of semi-open world third-person action-y thing. But she's not really into Tomb Raider anyway. Like, she's never, as far as the other stuff, like she doesn't really like the movies and she doesn't really care about the character or anything like that. So it didn't take long before she just kind of got bored of it and too challenged for how much she was enjoying it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she kind of put it down pretty quick. But then I think of people like, not everyone's going to get into everything. Like my mum has no interest in video games, like a lot of people wouldn't. And the only thing she likes playing ever is like trivia quiz games that we play as an entire family sometimes, like usually at Christmas or something. So there's an old game called Buzz Quiz World, which was on PS3, I think, but you can play it on newer stuff. But it came with physical controllers that were actual buttons that you pushed. So there was like when you wanted to buzz in to answer a question, you'd actually push a button.
Oh my god, that's so fun.
And then on the face of the controller, there was like 4 or 5 different colored buttons where you'd choose your answer. So you'd buzz in and then your character on the screen would like get to answer. And so you'd choose your answer on your controller. And it was very interactive in that sense. And yeah, so my mum got into playing that because she can understand that. And there's like no barrier to entry there. It's basically just push the button to buzz in. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
And then answer the question that's on the screen. So that sort of stuff is very accessible. Those sort of party games, I guess, are accessible for people who don't necessarily know or even want to know how to play games. So.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Another game that I can think of is Guitar Hero. And though that IP is like that, we still have like on the university department I study at, that is computer science. We have a room with all kinds of games and consoles, and someone very happily donated a PS2, I think, with a guitar from Guitar Hero. And I have to say, I play guitar. That is not like playing guitar, but it's still like a good finger exercise. But because holy crap, some of the levels can get a little bit out there, especially like on the higher difficulties.
Yeah, I love like Rock Band and Guitar Hero and stuff, just because I think they're really fun. But I remember getting frustrated with Guitar Hero because there were songs that I couldn't play on Guitar Hero, but I can play on real guitar. But the button combinations were just too confusing on Guitar Hero.
Yeah, I
So
get that.
it's kind of like the golf thing with my dad. Like, I understand the real thing probably too much, so the game version gets confusing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
But they're fun games.
Mm-hmm. They're very fun games. Actually, like and some other versions of it, like Rock Band, have like a microphone so you can sing along with whoever is playing the guitar. So it's like, hey, you're playing with me, but you're doing karaoke and I'm doing this crazy thing with the guitar.
Yeah. Well, and I had a good friend who I still have them, but one of my good friends, she and I used to play Rock Band all the time together because we're both really into music. And when we'd hang out and stuff, we'd go, hey, let's play some Rock Band for a little bit. And she didn't play any other games except Rock Band and didn't really have any interest in it either because we just liked playing music together and we'd have a good time and that was that and see you later. And but she didn't have any interest in any other games or anything. It was just, yep, that's what I like to play.
Definitely.
So, yeah. And then you've got like hardcore people playing Dark Souls with the Guitar Hero guitar and stuff. So
there are some really crazy people, or like I don't remember which game it was, but I remember someone playing like with the Dance Revolution path.
yeah, I've seen people play like Elder Scrolls with that more recently.
They're kind of crazy.
It's insane. I don't see the point.
Yeah, like back to the topic, like some games are like quite accessible to everyone who is able to move their body, I guess, is anything with motion controls. Again, the Just Dance games are perfect for a little party if you just want to move and don't have friends that actually like want to play like very serious video games. Or like the epitome of very casual and accessible to everyone was the Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort.
Yeah.
Where you have the motion controls. And I think those are the games that are the most responsive with the motion controls. People love it because it's like, hey, it's like I'm really playing tennis or ping pong or stuff like that.
Well, I think as well, like those sorts of games are games that people already understand.
Yeah.
So everyone knows how tennis is played. Everyone knows how 10-pin bowling works. I know heaps of people who at some stage have owned a Wii and Wii Sports and pretty much nothing else just because. And because they can understand how to play that or play darts or, you know, do all those kind of sports games with a motion controller and just waggle it about. And yeah, that's obviously very intuitive to a lot of people as well because, yeah, lots of people I know who aren't even into any games at all have owned a Wii and Wii Sports.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's cool. But I think at the end of the day, it does obviously depend on who you're talking to and their age and their experience and their interests. And it's like anything. It's like trying to recommend movies to people or music or anything. It is different for everybody, but there are some key things to remember that I think we as gamers sometimes forget, like the amount of stuff a game doesn't tell you.
Yeah.
And just assumes you know, and how familiar we are with gamepads and different types of controls. And we don't have to really think about where buttons are or what they mean or Yeah, even down to switching controllers. Like I switch between PlayStation and Xbox controllers all the time, and so I get different prompts on screen all the time. But for some reason, my brain manages to figure out that X on a PlayStation controller is at the bottom, and X on a Xbox controller is on the left.
And X on a Nintendo controller is at the top.
Well, that's where if I ever pick up a Nintendo controller, I get confused because I don't know where any of them are. So that's probably my experience of being inexperienced. Is when I'm at a friend's and we play, say, Mario Party or something on their Switch, and yeah, I don't know I have to look at the controller and go, oh, that's where the buttons are. So
yeah, like that one time before I got a PlayStation, where a friend was like, "Hey, do you want to try out Dark Souls?" And the thing is, in Nintendo games, you usually attack or do stuff with the face buttons. And in Dark Souls, you attack and block with the triggers.
Yeah.
That took a while to get used to.
Yeah. And imagine if you're not used to anything and you're trying to get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to add?
Other than really know the friend you're trying to recommend games to, or family member they're trying to recommend games to. And yeah, if you're playing with, for example, a kid or a teenager, one idea that I actually got from an anime is that make a group of friends you can trust, so they can always have like someone to play with. So I watched this anime where it's like Yamada-kun level 999 or something like that. And it is actually like a romance manga or a romance anime, but they meet through this MMO, and one of the friends of one of the protagonists of the anime has a little sister, and he made a guild on this MMO for his sister to have always someone to play with that was a safe person.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah,
it's a good idea. Yeah.
It was an excellent idea. So I was like, oh my god, I have to do that with my nephew whenever like he gets into the age of MMOs or something like that. But anyway, that's it from me. So
I hadn't really considered the kind of cybersecurity aspect of multiplayer gaming, but it's definitely a thing that you'd have to think about, isn't it? If you've got young kids, especially. And
yeah, especially like I saw you put Roblox in there. And well, my nephew has been very much instructed on not talking to anyone that isn't in his group of friends. But there's still like people on there like trying to either get to know kids because they're groomers or like just bad actors in general. So there, of course, there's gonna be like good people in there, but how's a kid gonna know?
Yeah. And again, it's like anything when you talk about kids as opposed to adults. Like there's a certain expectation that adults can figure stuff out for themselves, or at least have enough common sense to recognize things that may not be safe or good or whatever.
But even adults are free from that.
Well, even then, like I've been scammed before, and I'm not too embarrassed to say it, but even as like an IT professional in the past, I've still messed up. But yeah, kids who have no concept of these things, like to expect them to be able to navigate these spaces intelligently and safely is probably a bit much. Like the thing I'm always hot on with kids playing games or experience anything like listening to music or different types of movies or TV shows or anything is for adults to be present in that.
Yeah.
Like not just leave them to it and say, figure it out yourself. Because as someone who's into a lot of stuff that could be seen as fucked up, like I like some really extreme heavy music. I like some gratuitous, violent, horrible movies. I like intense, out there, crazy video games. Like, yeah, I'm into basically anything if it's there to be into. So I'm always up for kids experiencing different things and trying different things, and like, you know, and I think art and media and creativity is something that kids should be familiar with. But I think it's always good to have an adult there to say, this is fictional, right? And
yeah, definitely.
and the reason this character's doing that is because they're trying to teach you this lesson, or they're trying to tell you this thing, or they're trying to be a bad person to show that it's not good, not that it's something you want to do.
Yeah.
And, that sort of thing. So I think whatever you do, that's always a good thing. Like you say, to have a safe space and, try and help kids experience stuff, but in a safe way that's not going to mess them up and give them weird perceptions on things and weird ideas. So, yeah. But we may have got a bit tangenty here and there, but I think I enjoyed myself.
It was quite fun discussing this with you.
And as always, anyone listening, if you've got your 2 cents you'd like to add, please do. Always interested in what other people have to say as well. But I think we're pretty much done.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. If you have any comments, you could go into the comment section or send us an email to HLTBpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us on Discord or the How Long to Beat website. So our DMs are open.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.